Scripture reading will be found in Matthew 24, 1 through 3. I'll be reading it from the New Living Translation. It's Matthew 24, 1 through 3. As Jesus was leaving the temple grounds, his disciples pointed out the various temple buildings, but he responded, "Do you see all these buildings? I tell you the truth, they will be completely demolished. Not one stone will be left on top of another." Later, Jesus sat on Mount Olives when his disciples came to him privately and said, "Tell us when will this happen? What sign and signal will your return at the end of the world?"
Could it be tomorrow? Could it be today? As Adventists, we're people of prophecy. As Seventh-day Adventists, we are people who look forward to the soon coming of Jesus Christ. But we hear things like, when is the end? Aren't we living in the end times? Look at what's happening all around us. How close are we to the end? Are we there yet? Jesus paints a picture for us in Matthew 24. The disciples are equating the end time with the destruction of the temple and its buildings that surround it. And so Jesus, in describing the destruction of the temple, would intertwine the destruction of the temple with the end time to lighten the blow to the disciples. But look what Jesus tells us right after our scripture reading in verse 4. Verse 4 of Matthew chapter 24. Jesus answered and said to them, the first things that Jesus says is, "Take heed that no one deceives you." Isn't that an odd way for Jesus to begin describing the destruction of the temple and last day events? He tells them, take heed, don't let anyone deceive you. Who's he talking to? Is he talking to the everyday average person who attends church once a week? No. Is he, talking to the priests and the Pharisees? No. He's talking to his 12 disciples who are his closest companions, who are going to begin the work of building his church here on earth. And Jesus has to tell them, take heed, lest somebody deceives you. Now, if Jesus has to tell them that it's possible that they could be deceived, don't you think that we here should probably take even a greater heed to the possibility of being deceived? Let's pray as we get into it a little deeper. Dear Jesus, please be with us as, Lord, you gave this message to the disciples there on the Mount of Olives. Lord, a message that you wanted them to take notice of. So, Lord, help us as we take note of it as well. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Jesus begins about talking about being deceived and talks to the disciples about how it is possible for them to be deceived. In verse 5, of course, he would talk about false Christs that would arise. Well, that's very interesting. The disciples knew who the Christ was, didn't they? I mean, they knew Jesus. They knew the one who was it. But he said false Christ would come up. Jesus will actually talk about false Christ in a little bit more in Matthew 24. In verse 6, Jesus goes on to talk about wars and rumors of wars. How about that? Wars and rumors of wars. Has that been happening? You know, wars and rumors of wars are happening all the time, all over the place, ongoing, and has been since 2,000 years ago and beyond and more. Wars, rumors of wars, they're happening everywhere. But then in verse 6, Jesus continues, and then the last 6 words he says, but the end is not yet. Right? So wars and rumors of wars are not a signal of the end. That's just something we live with on a daily basis. You know, things happening in various places. Yeah. Read verse 7 and 8 together. It says, for nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines. Have you experienced famines? You know, it is amazing to me, the famines that we experience, the hunger that we experience, and a lot of people don't get this, but the hunger and famine that we experience even in our own country. You're like, huh? How is that? Well, yesterday my wife and I were at a food bank meeting in Cleburne, and we got to meet the lady that helps to run the food bank in the Methodist Church here in Joshua. And she said, do you realize, she said, we can give people food on Monday and they're out of food by Wednesday evening. How many of you know that that you have neighbors going hungry in this country? Maybe some of you are going hungry. I just want to put a plug for our food bank. If you think you are going hungry, you shouldn't. Let myself, Pastor Isaac, my wife, let one of us know. We'll get you food. Hey? We will get you food. But we have famines happening right here in our country because people are scared to let people know they're hungry. They're hungry. That's why schools have started feeding kids breakfast. Why? Because they have kids coming to school hungry. And they can't think in school because they're hungry. We have famines, folks, happening right here in the U.S. And it's not because they lack food. Well, it is because people lack food. We're just not getting the food to the right people. Sometimes I'm embarrassed when I think that there are people who have no food and I can open my cupboard and find extra cans. Famines. We don't have to go overseas. We don't have to go to Africa. Pestilences. Pestilences. Anybody experience pestilences? It was amazing to me a couple years ago, the number of people on our street, in our neighborhood, around our church, that got Lyme disease because of the deer ticks. We had a herd of about 8 deer that ran the neighborhood. And if you don't believe in hunters, you should. Okay? That was a herd of 8 deer in the city of Pittsburgh. Okay? And people were coming down sick with Lyme disease. Deer would get hit on the highway, and people were crashing their vehicles and getting hurt and injured in cars. Pestilences. How about this area that has to spray for the West Nile virus? You don't have to go overseas to experience these things. Earthquakes. And this. Some versions say in diverse or various places. Some of you have felt the shaking here, right? Anybody ever felt an earthquake here? Yeah. Come on, Texas is a hotbed for earthquakes, isn't it? You know, that's what you think of when you think of earthquakes. No, you think of like Japan and, you know, places like that where the continental shelf and, you know, all those places. You don't think of Texas. You think of California, you know, San Francisco. They're Texas, you know, earthquakes. Texas, you know, not so much. Verse 8, and all these things are the beginning of sorrows. The beginning of sorrows. Verse 9, we have tribulations. Jesus says you're going to be hated by all nations. Verse 10, verse 10, it says, and many will be offended and will betray one another and will hate one another. Oh, wow. Have we experienced that? People being offended, people hating another person just because maybe they have a difference of opinion. You know, wow. Also, verse 11, there's going to be more false prophets who will deceive many. Verse 12, lawlessness will abound. The love of many will grow cold. Love of many will grow cold. Lawlessness abounds. I still remember moving into Pennsylvania, seeing billboards along the freeway and warning people about fraud. I'm like, really? You have to advertise it on billboards? Oh yeah, but fraud was rampant. People would set fire to their own homes to collect the insurance money. It was huge. It was a huge thing. And I was like, wow. It would have never even crossed my mind. Lawlessness. You know, it isn't about following the law anymore. It's about seeing how we can get away and around the law. That is the issue today. Verse 13 and 14. But he who endures to the end shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in all the world as a witness to all the nations, and then the end will come. So Jesus says that when the gospel of the kingdom is preached in all the world, it's a witness to the nations, says then the end will come. Endurance is needed. The gospel of the kingdom, the good news, is needed. In looking for signs, I think we have missed an aspect of the end that is very crucial to our survival. In verses 15 and 16, in studying the prophecies of Daniel, we can see about the abomination of desolation, and standing there, we can see that looks at the Romans coming into Jerusalem, the destruction of the temple in 70 AD. But look what happens in the next few verses as Jesus talks about the flight from this terrible tribulation time. Starting in verse 17. It says, let him who is in the housetop not go down to take anything out of his house. And let him who is in the field not go back to get his clothes. But woe to those who are pregnant and those who are nursing babies in those days. And pray that your flight may be not in winter or on the Sabbath. Jesus, through this, is telling us that things are going to happen quickly. Quickly. There isn't even time to go back and get your clothes. He said, if you're out in the field, don't even think about going back and getting your clothes. Leave right now. Get out. And if you're on the roof of your house, don't even go inside your house. Just go down those outside stairs. Go. Don't even wait. Things are going to be happening so fast that you won't have time to get whatever stuff you may have stashed in your garage for surviving the end times. I know there are people that have kits that they've put in their garages. My survival kit for the end time. Jesus says it's going to happen so fast that you're not going to have time to go into your garage and get it. My wife and I have family members who have stored up stuff for at least 2 years so that they can survive the end times. Folks, you're not going to have time to go into your basement to get whatever you stashed. Oh, here's another thing. It appears that living was continuing to happen just as it always had before the end happens. Did you get that? We have a person up on their house. We have another person out in their field. You know, they're going about living like they did on a day-to-day regular basis. We have people worried about, well, I'm going to have to find a place that we can hide out in the last days so that we can escape and get away. Guess what? If you're planning all that out, you're not going to have time to get there. You're not going to have time to get there. Because Jesus says it is going to happen fast. And people are going to be living normally until it happens. Boom. Then it happens. So, verse 22, Jesus says, "And a great tribulation takes place." But verse 22 specifically, look at these words. He says, "And unless those days were shortened, no flesh would be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days will be shortened." Now, if those days were not shortened, no one would be saved. Did you hear that? Did you hear that the days need to be shortened? Okay. Well, what can that mean? Well, let's think about it this way. Think of our calendar. January through December. Okay, various months. Let's just say that God is going to come this year. Wouldn't that be fantastic? But God says, you know what? I'm not going to wait and keep people waiting until December 31st. He said, how about if I come October 31st? Wow, wouldn't that be great? If Jesus said, I'm coming in October 31st, 2017. I'm going to cut this year short by 2 months. Anybody be happy? You know, there's a couple of people like, yeah, you know, I that wouldn't upset me. But wait, if Jesus came October 31st, do you realize that we would have to skip Thanksgiving and Christmas? All right? Do you get that? We would have to skip Thanksgiving and Christmas, like two of the best holidays of the year. Okay? Thanksgiving, big, huge family time, meal together, you know, 3 football games, you know, on Thanksgiving Day. We would have to skip, and Christmas, kids, no presents this year. Oh, look at them like, what? No presents? None. Parents, whew, no presents. Yes. We'd have to skip because Jesus says, I'm cutting the calendar short this year. Would we be disappointed? Some might be tempted to tell God, well, can you wait, because that's the times I get together with my family every year. It's the only time I see them. It used to be the time that my family got together, Thanksgiving and Christmas time. I'd see all of my cousins there. My grandparents, aunts, and uncles. We wouldn't see each other any other time of the year but Thanksgiving and Christmas. Oh, it was a great time. Could we say to God, can you wait? You don't have to go to December 31st, December 27. Give us a day to recuperate from December 25. And come on December 27. That way we can enjoy the holidays. You're probably snickering inside when I've made that suggestion. In fact, out loud, some of you. You're like, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous to think that we want to, make God wait until December 27 or December 31st. He can come, whenever he wants. But just think about that for a moment. Because Jesus, once again, turns to the idea of false Christ. Verse 23 and 25. Then if any one of you says, look, here's the Christ, or there, do not believe it. For false Christ and false prophets will rise and show great signs and wonders to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Great signs and wonders. Jesus tells us that false Christ, false prophets are trying to get us to look at the next sign, at the next wonder, because they want to deceive, if possible, even the elect. Jesus was telling us this before it happened so that we can protect ourselves against it. Something that's amazing to watch here in Texas is a good thunderstorm. You see, in Pennsylvania, a good thunderstorm, well, all the hills, the valley, nothing. But here, I can't tell you the number of nights that I've driven away from the church and I'm driving towards home and I've watched the lightning light up the sky over Fort Worth. As I'm driving towards home, I'm like, wow, that's fantastic. I can see a thunderstorm like miles away. Or I can watch it out my front door, as it's approaching, or the back door as it's, miles away. Lights up the sky. And when the lightning flashes, almost before you notice it, it's gone. Lightning flashes are quick, aren't they? Jesus tells us that his coming is going to be like lightning flashing. He just says it's like lightning. Now, is that fast or slow? And if Jesus decided to come today, and he says his coming is like lightning, he's here. Did you get that? If Jesus decided to come today, he's here. It's that fast. It's that fast. But we have a tendency to place all kinds of signs out there to give us assurances that Jesus isn't coming today. That Jesus can't come today. It might be tomorrow, but it can't be today. Right? Don't we do that? For a lot of people say, oh, Pastor, we have to wait for the Sunday laws. Okay? Check. Already here. You're like, what? Yeah, absolutely. I remember attending Andrews University. We lived in a little town called Decatur. We couldn't buy alcohol in the store in Decatur before noon on Sunday. Why? because they didn't want anybody drinking before they went to church. There was a sign in the store that said so. It was there. I've been in places where you can't buy ammunition on Sunday because they don't want anybody getting shot on Sunday. Right? There are all kinds of laws about worship around the world. Just because they may not be happening in your house or in your neighborhood doesn't mean that they don't already exist. They do. So, check, that's gone. Oh, wait. Pastor, we have to wait for the shaking. You ever hear that one? I've been hearing that since I was a little kid. You know, the elders, we're waiting for the shaking. People are going to be shaken out of the church. Half the people don't attend church now. Don't you think half have been shaken out already? Right? So, some of you have family members that don't attend anymore. You're like, well, okay. Oh, I know what it is. It is the influence of contemporary Christian music. It's going to bring us down, Pastor. It's coming. Yeah. How about... I know what it is. It's the Omega deception. It's this, it's that. I do not know how I got on these people's list of connection, but almost every other week from this prophecy website, I am getting the latest reason of prophetic fulfillment that they're seeing. I keep scratching my head and I'm like, really? When did that jump out of Revelation? Like every other week, it's changing. It's a new thing that's coming. It's a new thing. Jesus here in Matthew is telling us that we need to be ready all the time, not waiting for the next sign, the next possibility, the next thing. Because if you're always waiting for some sign, some possibility in the future, you're going to wait too long. In fact, the calendar may be shortened. And let's say that sign you were looking forward to doesn't happen. Believe me, you will be disappointed when Jesus shows up. Because you were deceived in thinking that you had to wait for the next sign. Because Jesus wants you ready now. Because if you are ready now, it doesn't matter when he comes. But I thank God for his patience with us. Isn't God wonderful? And as we look at scriptures, we see that God continually tries to save people from destruction. Matthew 24:37 and 39 says, "But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark. Life continues as it usually did. Normal life. And it says, and did not know until the flood came and took them away, so also will the Son of Man be. The Son of Man be. Life continues as it always has. But they kept looking for the next sign. How do I know they kept looking for the next sign? Believe me, Noah preached, one sign. Ark is built, another sign. Animals come from all over, 2 by 2 and groups of 7. Another sign. You get what I'm saying? They were seeing sign after sign after sign. And they still didn't get in the boat. In fact, they kept going. They kept just operating as life was normal as it always has been. Just as it always was. But the signs had continued on as they always had. I want to back up a few verses. Verse 29. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun will be darkened. Has that happened? Have you been to our prophecy meetings? Yes, absolutely. It's happened. The moon will not give its light. Has that happened? Yes. The stars will fall from heaven. The powers from the heavens will be shaken. Have those things happened? The signs have happened. But Jesus hasn't come yet. So, we have a tendency to say, here's your sign. Here's your next sign. Here's your next sign. Oh, wait. I got to tell you what the Pope is doing this week. Here's your sign. Oh, wait. I have to tell you what ISIS is doing. Here's your sign. Oh, wait. I have to tell you what the president is doing with the Pope. Here's your sign. Oh, wait. I have to tell you what's happening at the General Conference building. Here's your sign. We keep thinking, oh, here's another sign, here's another sign. But when the next sign came to those during Noah's time, the next sign was the rain falling from heaven. And it was too late. What if the next sign is Jesus coming? Oh, wait! But what about all those other signs? What about all those other holidays? Wait! Slow down, Jesus! Can you give me 48 hours to get things in line? Too late. Too late. In fact, Matthew 24:42-44 says, "Watch therefore, for you do not know what hour your Lord is coming. But know this, if the master of the house had known what hour the thief would come, he would have watched and not allowed his house to be broken into. Therefore you also be ready, for the Son of Man is coming at an hour you don't expect." So if you know what sign Jesus is waiting for to come, then you know when to expect him, don't you? Well, if all I have to wait for is a national Sunday law in the United States, then I know when Jesus is going to come, right? And I know when to expect him. But Jesus says my coming is going to be unexpected. Unexpected. Which means he could cut time short, and those signs we've been waiting for might not happen. We might have to skip Thanksgiving this year. We might have to skip Christmas. We might have to skip a national Sunday law. We might have to skip being dragged out of our houses at gunpoint. Well, and according to this, that was actually the very point Jesus was making. Because how many of those people that he asked to flee were fleeing because they were at gunpoint? None of them. Because life was happening just as it always had. Then all of a sudden, it was over. It was over. Verse 48-41. "But if the evil servant says in his heart, my master is delaying his coming, begins to beat his fellow servants, to eat and drink with the drunkards, the master of that servant will come on a day when he is not looking for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of. And will cut him into two and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. We have settled into living life because we haven't believed the latest sign. You know, it's been over 100 years since those signs in the 1800s. So those signs, they don't matter. We will now have new signs because those signs are past, right? You know, so now we need to have new signs that we can put our faith and trust in because those signs are over. Life goes on just as usual. Many people are even starting to doubt Jesus' actual return. How do I know that? Just look at how we're living. Just like everybody else. Luke adds to the events of the destruction, and Luke talks about the destruction of Sodom. In Luke 17:28-30, just briefly, he says, "Likewise, as it was also in the days of Lot, they ate, they drank, they bought, they sold, they planted, they built, on and on. But on the day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. So it will be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed." Did Lot have a lot of time escaping Sodom? No. In fact, with Lot and his family leaving Sodom, the destruction was happening so rapidly that they couldn't even get away. And his wife turned around and looked and was a pillar of salt. The destruction happened so quickly. It happened while they were going away. Wow. Well, Pastor, I can wait till that sign that, we won't be able to buy or sell, and, I can wait for that sign. Tell that to the people in Noah's day. Tell that to the people in Sodom. I'm waiting for that sign. It says that they were eating, marrying, they were living life as usual all the way up until the very day. Both the destruction of Sodom and the flood resulted in a few people being saved. Sodom ended up being Lot and his two daughters. At the flood, Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives. Not many people. Why? You see, because Jesus doesn't want any to perish. Jesus wants to wait as long as possible for people to be saved. But we often ignore the signs of the kingdom, signs of the gospel. We think, I'm okay. Things are going along fine. Church is good, isn't it? The pastor's preaching the Bible. We do evangelistic series. We're good. Or we say, Jesus can't come yet because that national Sunday law is not into place. We can still buy and sell. We're not being persecuted in our churches. Where are you? Do you believe that Jesus can come tomorrow? Do you believe that Jesus could come today? Could it be today? Some of you are thinking, I sure hope not. I got to go home and get my life in order. Should have done that before you came here today. You see, if Jesus' coming is totally unexpected, that's just the type of God we serve, isn't it? Think about that. Isn't it totally unexpected that we would have and serve a God who would come down from heaven to earth to become one of his creatures and to die for us? Isn't that unexpected? I mean, even all of heaven was like, oh, you're going to do what? God's been doing the unexpected from the beginning of time. That he let Adam and Eve live outside the garden. He let life continue as it was. That God saved Noah and his family. That God, with Abraham, went into Sodom and brought Lot and his girls out. We serve a God who is always doing the unexpected. And wouldn't it be just like him to do the unexpected for his second coming? And to do it at a time when we don't expect it. Well, wait. You know, I don't want to wait to expect God to come tomorrow. I want to be ready today. Every day, I want to be ready. And I hope you want to be ready each and every day for Jesus to come as well.